welcome to the Talking Crop podcast. My name is Kathryn Seebruck, and I'm a commercial agriculture educator with University of Illinois Extension, serving Daviess-Stephenson, and Winnebago counties. Talking Crop is a row crop production podcast, and episodes typically occur every other week during the growing season, but we're putting out some special bonus episodes throughout January to spotlight each of the presenters joining us at the Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit, happening January 28th at Highland Community College in Freeport. The Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit is a one-day conference tailored towards corn and soybean producers, agribusiness representatives, and ag agency professionals to provide them with the latest in agronomic research from university faculty and extension specialists. Our goals are to provide producers with applied information they can implement on their farms and to give agriculture professionals the knowledge they need to serve the farmers they work with. You can register online for the Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit at go.illinois.edu/agsfreeport, or you can call our Stephenson County office at 815-235-4125. Registration is $25 and includes lunch. 5 continuing education units will be available for certified crop advisors. As of last year, this program has been adopted across the state, and you can find a list of all agronomy summits in the series at go.illinois.edu/agronomy summits. As mentioned previously, these special bonus episodes are meant to introduce you to our speakers and give you a taste of what they'll be speaking on at the Agronomy Summit in Freeport on January 28th. The next guest for our bonus episodes is Daniel Smith, Outreach Program Manager for the Nutrient and Pest Management Program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. Dan's presentation is titled Managing Waterhemp with Cover Crops. Dan will discuss how you can use cover crops successfully in your current crop rotation to suppress weeds. Please enjoy this special bonus episode of Talking Crop with Daniel Smith, who will be joining us at the Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit on January 28th. We hope to see you there. Hello, Dan, and welcome back to the Talking Crop podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kathryn.
So, Dan, as we've been talking about leading up to our meeting today, this is a special episode of Talking Crop as it's kind of out of season, so to speak. Typically, Talking Crop is done during the growing season between May and September. But I wanted to do these special episodes to highlight you as a speaker and our other speakers for our upcoming Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit on January 28th, which will be occurring at Highland Community College in Freeport. So we're very excited to have you as a speaker again at the Agronomy Summit. I think your talk is going to be very well received and we'll have a lot of really great information for our audience members. And for those listening, this is just an opportunity for us to get to know Dan before hopefully you see him at the Agronomy Summit in January and to get a taste of what he will be presenting on at the summit. So Dan, can you first provide us with some of your background, some of your extension history, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an exciting opportunity to come back to Illinois. I grew up in Northern Illinois. And then I went off to college at UW-Platteville for soil and crop science and ag business and ended up at UW-Madison in their graduate school program. Since then, I've been working a little bit in weed science. That was what I went to grad school in, but a lot in nutrient management. And I was the Southwest Regional Specialist for a long time for the University of Wisconsin-Madison, moved into a programming manager role where I helped manage the nutrient pest management program. And now this spring, 2026, I'm going to be returning to that outreach role with weed science, which I'm very excited about. So I've gotten to see a lot of different things in the weed management world in southern Wisconsin. Always great to follow along and see what's going on in northern Illinois. And it's great to share some of the stuff that we're doing in Wisconsin with those farmers in northern Illinois too.
Yes, absolutely. And Dan, you are a great asset to have close to Illinois, so to speak. Like you said, you're from here, which is great. And so you understand the agronomic situations that we're working with in Northern Illinois. So that's really valuable to have you as a resource for us. So Dan, we typically talk about cover crops together, right? That's what you spoke on the last time you were with us at the Agronomy Summit. And it was also the topic of your first Talking Crop episode. And so the aim you typically take is at how to cover crops successfully in the upper Midwest, since that's inherently just more difficult to do up in Northern Illinois, Southern Wisconsin, than say somewhere like Central Southern Illinois and beyond. And at the Agronomy Summit, you will continue to talk about this topic with us. Specifically, you'll be speaking on how to manage water hemp with cover crops.
Can you give us an overview of what your presentation will be covering?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2018, we had a lot of questions from farmers about how to control water hemp. And we were primarily approaching water hemp management in soybeans using a pre-emergent herbicide. In Wisconsin, there was not a ton of glyphosate resistance just 10 years ago. So up until from 2015 to 2018, herbicides were working really well. And then finally, 2018, we did a plot day and we got challenged to say, hey, some of these herbicide options are maybe no longer working on my farm. What are some other tools that we can be researching to tell farmers what are the best options? And that's where we started using Rye to suppress weeds, and particularly soybean systems. So that was kind of the foundational start. So every year since 2018, we've been researching using Rye in a systems-based approach for managing water hemp. Water hemp's a really unique weed as it emerges after Memorial Day and can emerge through crop harvest even. So it's a season-long battle with water hemp, and every single one of those plants is trying to produce seed. So that's a huge challenge for us, particularly because those produce thousands of seeds that are then next year's problems. So in the rotation we're looking at is corn and soybeans, so very relevant, obviously, to our friends in Illinois. And we're looking at how can we plant this cover crop into the rotation and make just minor adjustments to the crop rotation to remain profitable and have outstanding yields while also suppressing weeds using Rye. Rye is as effective as adding another herbicide mode of action group to your crop rotation, so that's a huge asset. We use the biomass from rye to smother out those small seeded broadleafs. There's a lot of talk about allelopathy as well, which we'll talk through in the presentation. We probably don't have enough time today to chat through all the different aspects of using rye, but the foundational approach that we've taken is we plant a bushel after corn and soybean harvest, and then we terminate that rye either at planting or even a little bit after planting for soybeans. For corn, we get a little bit nervous. So that's level 201 for corn and rye management. We're going to wait on that one. But soybeans, the quote I've been using is they really don't care. It's amazing how well the plants respond to that heavy biomass environment. And it's absolutely amazing how many weeds we suppress. And this is a long-term approach. You'll see results in year one because that biomass is effective immediately. But the longer we have this, the more you're able to shift your weed species away because you're no longer producing seeds. And weed seeds typically don't live forever. Some live a long time, but the most troublesome ones that we manage don't really live past 5 or 6 years. So you're starting to smother out that seed bank as well.
This sounds like it's, like you had mentioned, it's another tool for weed control, right? And the quote that Dr. Aaron Hager at University of Illinois always likes to say is, when it comes to resistance, we are using herbicides typically to try to control a problem that is caused by herbicides. And so I really like this concept of using cover crops to suppress weeds because it is not a herbicide, right? So that's a really strong method to use to combat resistance. And also hopefully economically, it's a positive as well. Would you, or have you seen that in your work at all? Do you do any of the economic analysis of this?
We did a little bit of economic analysis last year that I'll include in the talk. Essentially, there's a couple main big buckets. One is how much is your herbicide program really costing? And for soybeans, it could be up to $80 an acre, which has changed dramatically in just a few years. We also look at incentive programs. So there's a variety of incentive programs from crop insurance, NRCS programs that really help supplement that cost of the cover crop. Sometimes these programs pay for all the cost of the cover crop. So then you're able to pay for the cover crop with some cost share options. You're able to then reduce maybe some of your other inputs, such as your herbicide program, because you're using that biomass, and then end up with a little bit of a net positive from the whole thing. Overall, especially in soybeans, I don't see negatives to planting rye and cover crops together, rye and soybeans together. I really see a lot of benefits and really strong yields out of that system. I also wanted to add, as the farmers in Champaign say that they're too far north to grow cover crops. So this is a huge challenge we have in the Midwest. There's farmers in far northern Wisconsin that are having phenomenal success with cover crops. One farmer I visited in particular, he is about 4 hours north of Madison, Wisconsin, and has a diverse cover crop mix that he plants after his crop rotation. He does include wheat in his rotation, so he's allowed that small grain window to plant in that summer timing too. But it's amazing what farmers are doing with cover crops in the upper Midwest. So never say you're too far north. We planted Syrah rye into frozen ground even before. Not a recommendation from the talk, but it did grow the next spring. We did have good biomass. And the last couple of falls have been great for cover crop establishment. So I think chatting through all these different options with the attendees in the room, very excited about that, learning about their challenges that they've faced, maybe thinking about cover crops and chatting through those is going to be a lot of fun.
You mentioned that in this study, you all were planting about a bushel. And I know that that can be a little bit daunting to some producers, right? Because it's risky planting cover crops at all, but to plant a relatively higher rate is also, it can be a little, like I said, scary. And so will you talk about, or have you guys looked at planting lower rates of cereal rye and what effect on weed management those kind of lower rates might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Wisconsin Weed Science Program under Dr. Rodrigo Worley has done a lot of evaluation on biomass rates, and those grad students have done a phenomenal job on looking at how much biomass we really need to suppress weeds. If you're going to suppress all your weeds, such as water hemp, to a significant level, you're going to need about 4,600 pounds of biomass, which is about waist high. That's a lot of biomass, I understand, and I'll show some pictures of that. That's kind of the Cadillac program. That's the best scenario you can get without maybe doing a crimping pass. To suppress weeds, any amount of biomass that's covering the surface is going to help us out quite a bit. So even a 20-pound seeding rate of rye is going to do a phenomenal job at suppressing some of the weeds. But it's also all about the goal and the system and the tools that you have in your toolbox to manage the cover crop. If you say own a drone, or you own a broadcast seeder and you can broadcast your Syrah rye, or you have a vertical tillage tool you can broadcast and incorporate your rye with. That's a great start. That's a good place to be. Those are good tools to use. And maybe 20 pounds is the best that works for that type of equipment, especially a drone. So those are all good places to start and think about what can I do next and what did I learn from this type of seeding pass. A bushel used to be the standard for a lot of the program's cost share practices. I know a lot has changed since we started, so that's just why we started there. From a weed management perspective, 3 bushels would be better, but economics on that is really tough to make work, and then the logistics are too.
So Dan, I have one more question for you. For those who are using cover crops for weed suppression, you can sort of think of that as a relatively higher level management strategy for a cover cropper. So for those who might be newer to using cover crops and see the benefit of using them as another quote unquote tool in the toolbox for weed control, what would you advise those folks, those more novice cover croppers? How do they start and build up to this point of using cover crops successfully as a weed control method?
Yeah, so start with your corn ground in the fall. So your corn stalks in the fall, leave that and try and plant a Syrah rye cover crop into those corn stalks. It could be done pre-harvest as well with, say, an aerial application, but establish a 20 pounds to a full bushel of rye in those corn stalks in the fall when you get done with harvest. Timing does not honestly matter. The rye is going to grow in the spring. Come spring, you're going to have some management decisions that you hopefully will have plans A, B, and C thought out for. But we're going to no-till plant soybeans into this rye. And we want to go through planter maintenance over the wintertime. We're not buying a new planter. We're not buying all the new fancy gadgets. Those are good tools that allow us to cover more acres in unopportune times. But for planting into this one cover crop field, we have all the tools that we need. And we're starting small too. We're going to start with a 5-acre section to try this on of a field. So we're going to go out and we're going to plant our soybeans into this. Our planter's been well maintained, and we're able to get to a good soybean planting depth with our planting equipment. So making sure that those two kind of core concepts are in place the day we plant are going to be great. Planting date, really, earlier the better for soybeans is what our soybean agronomists tell us. From a rye biomass standpoint, we really want to hold off on that. So we're going to try and find the happy medium. And let's just say for today, that's May 1st to May 10th. A little bit later maybe than you're used to, but this is a 5-acre trial, getting our equipment dialed in, seeing what things look like. So our rye biomass on May 1st is the field is green. We probably have 6 to 8 inches of biomass on an average year. I realize that Northern Illinois springs happen rapidly. So if it's a warm spring or you're farming in the farthest south portion of Northwest Illinois, you're going to have a little bit more biomass than that. we're going to plant into that field just like we plant all of our other soybean acres. The very first 20 feet, we're going to check a lot of planter settings to ensure that we're actually planting the soybeans deep enough in that biomass. Otherwise, we'll have challenges later on in the season, and we're going to lose a lot of yield. Then we need to burn down that rye. So if we're working with a local supplier, we need to have that on their radar to say, hey, we have this 5 acres of rye. We need it burned down in the next 2 weeks or so. We planted our soybeans green, so that has some pre-emergent herbicide restrictions that we can no longer use if we wait until after planting to apply those. And then we're going to just watch that field the rest of the summer. Go out to that field with a spade and dig up some plants, dig up some rye biomass, look at that field. Overall, we've had a bushel of rye. It would be maybe our max expense plus our seeding cost, however we do that, whether it be a neighbor's no-till drill we borrowed or a drone pass or a custom operator pass. And then we're going to have an extra burn down pass on that field potentially, as well as we have to burn down that rye, which is a standard burn down rate of glyphosate. So those are going to be our expenses for that 5 acres. But what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to compare the rest of the field with this cover crop practice and see how much that biomass is holding back our water hemp. I would do this on one of our most weedy fields too. A field that you have really good weed management on doesn't need rye. Rye is another tool in the toolbox. For soil health practices and water infiltration reasons, I would plant rye on more acres. But if you're just starting out with this, a little bit on the cautious side, start with your weediest field. You'll see the biggest results.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I really love how you break those things down step by step. It makes it very applicable and very attainable. So I really appreciate you providing that and also all of the information that you provided in this episode. And we really look forward to having you at the Northwest Illinois Agronomy Summit in Freeport on January 28th.
Yeah, excited to be there. Thanks, Kathryn.